third of the way through the season, how are the returns of Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray going? I'll look at the NBA trade market, including could the Nuggets look to add an OG? Plus, we'll preview the Memphis Grizzlies game coming up Tuesday night. All this and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We love having you guys as part of the community. We appreciate you guys listening wherever you are. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show and join all sorts of folks hanging out with us in the chat daily, like John and Alan and Fernando, and lots of folks hanging out with us on the daily. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Adam Mares. He's director of content for DNVR. And on today's show, we're going to talk about, we're going to look at Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. And based off the preseason expectations, kind of where they're at. We'll talk a little bit about Michael Porter Jr.'s situation as he's been upgraded on the injury report and means he's getting closer to a return. Plus, we're going to talk about the trade market. The NBA trade market's starting to pick up a little bit. We'll talk about some of the potential options and if the Denver Nuggets should be aggressive or just kind of poke around in the trade market. Plus, in the final segment, we'll preview the Memphis Grizzlies game tonight. Should be a fun one down at Ball Arena. Adam, happy Tuesday to you. I'll start with this question. Is Jamal Murray ahead, behind, below expectations? Because he was ahead of expectations there for a while, and now after a rougher stretch of games, where are you at with your assessment of where Jamal's at?
I mean, this injury changes things. I mean, we're now in the portion of the season where it feels like we're no longer in the Murray return. We're now like in just the regular flow of a season where he's injured. I will say though, if forced to come up with the binary answer of ahead or behind expectation, I would say behind only in that Christmas is less than a week away. We always looked at that as the game where it's like by Christmas, that's where we want to see him, kind of start to come back into form. And it just doesn't look like, I mean, who knows, but it doesn't look like he'll be 100% for Christmas. So it doesn't look like he'll be 100% back by Christmas. And by the way, that game has some symbolic importance. To me personally, I was texting you this the other day, but when Jamal Murray went down, him or Devin Booker, I think most people would have taken Devin Booker, but there was strong evidence that Murray was maybe the player you would rather have at that moment because Murray at that point had the greater playoff moments. Like at the biggest stage, he had been the better player in those moments. Since then, Devin Booker has really become a great player, probably a top 10 player in the NBA. And it just kind of gives you that alternate timeline where if Murray didn't get hurt, do we have 2 years of growth from Murray to where he's at that level? And what would that have meant? So to me, it's a symbolic one, but if forced to choose, I would say slightly behind because of this injury.
What are they actually listing the injury as?
Let me see. I actually don't know what they've said. I thought they said knee. But let me see if I can't pull this up from the Nuggets email.
I've got here on the official NBA one. Murray is listed with left knee injury management as questionable for tonight's game. So he's just kind of undergoing like soreness. I think it's kind of to be expected. I think Jamal is still ahead of where I kind of thought he would be. I thought he would be slower. I think part of this is kind of a complicated thing to assess because my expectation was he wouldn't be the same player for a while. And so he would have to adjust his game. I don't know that he's done that. I don't know that he's like changed his game. He's still basically just Jamal. And on some nights he looks like Jamal and on some nights he doesn't. And that's
which was the Jamal we saw before he got injured.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's back to being inconsistent.
He's back.
I will say this though, and I think it's an important note. The last 3 games he has become a passive player, but he's become a facilitator. And in hindsight, knowing now that he's been injured and banged up, that it makes a little sense. And I have to give him a little credit too. He's tailored his game, it appears, to being a table setter. Like he's not going out there and jacking 20 shots and missing them all because he's just trying to play his game. He has like adjusted a little bit, knowing he can't get that pop.
Yeah, and I mean, he's smart enough to know in certain situations, let's just get into the 2-man game with Nikola, and that'll generate good offense. And like having bread and butter is fine. Like I'm never going to expect Jamal Murray to be Chris Paul. I'm never going to expect Jamal Murray to be Tyrese Halliburton. So it's okay for him to be the player that he is, and he is finding ways to contribute. The rebounding efforts I think have been good. The efforts I think it really has been there, and that's never really been an issue with Jamal. He's always played hard. So that one I think there are layers to it, but I wouldn't say it's been disappointing. Then there's MPJ, who on the injury report for the Memphis game has been upgraded to doubtful from out. I feel like they're throwing fans a bone. That's my personal assessment.
Like he's not playing tonight, but they're just like, guys, chill. He's almost back.
Well, they've been telling us that he's going to be back for 3 weeks, and they've just, we keep getting questions about, okay, like he's supposed to be coming back, but there's no change in his status. I don't expect him back for this one. Usually they'll upgrade him to questionable in the overnight if he's going to play. When he they
have done the doubtful one before though. They've upgraded to doubtful and then played, so it's not hopeless. Although what a night to come back, John Morant, TNT, tough game.
Yeah, fast game. It's going to be a very fast game, so that's one that's maybe tougher. But there's not. I think maybe the Portland game might be the easier one of the three to come back against. So the numbers with MPJ are great. The effort we were really encouraged by him early in the season. The effort level was really there, especially on the defensive end. How do we kind of assess how this has gone for MPJ, given the injury and everything else? Like, where are you at with MPJ right now?
I mean, he was off to an incredible start. So it's hard because his season has basically been in 3 parts. The first 15 games or so, or 12 games, he was fantastic. The defense wasn't there. The mobility wasn't there. The finishing at the rim. But the playing within the flow of the offense was there, as good as we had ever seen it over a 10-game stretch. And that's kind of forgotten because when Murray and Jokic went down, and maybe he was dealing with a heel injury, he looked his worst that we've seen him play. And then, of course, over this last 15 games or whatever it's been, he's just been out of the lineup. So for me, he's had 3 seasons, and our memories are painted or tainted, I should say, by the end of the last little bit of it. But I actually think we should be encouraged by Michael Porter based on what we saw when he was here. And I'm actually excited to get him back to see if they can regain some of the momentum with him specifically that they had early in the year. I mean, think about it this way, Matt. Murray became better in the middle portion. Jokic became better in the later portion, but Porter was good to start. And if you were to get just Murray or Jokic playing at the level they have, in the middle and later portions of that, with Porter playing where he was 50% from 3, not stepping outside the lines, doing all the things we wanted, I actually think the Nuggets would look even better. So I'm hopeful as he comes back into the lineup. And by the way, we've seen Porter and Jokic look very good together without Murray. It's the 3 of them that we haven't always seen. If Murray is a little banged up and has to miss 2 or 3 games, that wouldn't be the worst time for Porter to come back, where he is sort of elevated in his comfort level and responsibility. So I don't think it would be great for a long period of time, and I don't expect it to happen. I don't think either of those guys want to miss the Christmas Day game where they're on the big stage. But it wouldn't be the worst thing if they got a game or 2 under the belt of, hey, you're elevated in the pecking order as you get your footing under you.
That's an interesting idea. It's the numbers with Nicole and MPJ have always been really good. This has been kind of the thing, and this is why MPJ is a real good test of a lot of the things that I talk about, right? Where I'm like, well, look, the plus minus tells you what has worked. It just tells you what has worked and what hasn't. It doesn't tell you, it's not predictive. It just tells you what has worked and what hasn't. The minutes with MPJ have worked, and they've worked on the defensive end. Doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't have to. It's worked, right? And so it'll be interesting to see. I'm really interested to see what happens with the defense if MPJ comes back. If they bring the kind of effort that they brought in the Hornets game, the starters do, and MPJ helps stabilize the second unit a little bit, because I don't know. What's weird is first it was they put MPJ with the bench and it worked for a little bit, and then it didn't. And they put Jamal with the bench and it didn't. I think
Porter with the bench, I'd have to look at the numbers, but I felt like there was a couple good games in there. Again, right as he gets hurt is kind of when this is all happening. But I felt like that was not a solution, but it was certainly moving in the right direction.
I mean, I would really like to see Jamal and MPJ with the bench. Like that to me is like, because that serves two purposes at once. It stabilizes the bench unit by not having as many guys in it. And then the other thing is it will encourage them to learn how to play together. Those two have never learned how to play together. Jamal and MPJ have never learned how to play together. Like, that needs to be something they figure out. Those two have got to develop a little bit of chemistry. You have to have a little bit of chemistry between 2 and 3.
I agree 100%.
So that's going to have to be part of the equation.
Real quick, though, as we're talking about different lineup combinations, I just want to state, this is the Nuggets' upcoming schedule. Memphis, Portland, Phoenix, at Sacramento twice, Miami, Boston, Minnesota, Clippers, Cleveland, Lakers, Phoenix, Clippers. Like, that's the next 13 or 14 games. Those are all games they could lose. Like, yes. I'm not saying they're going to go on a 14-game losing streak. I'm just saying there's no easy games in that entire. The easiest one is the Laker one, which, okay, that one might actually, I mean, they just lost to the Lakers, but whatever. But outside of that, you're talking about all playoff caliber teams. And most of them, Memphis is a contender, Phoenix is a contender, Boston's a contender, Cleveland maybe fringe contender. Like, they're not just playoff teams, they're good playoff teams.
Yeah. I mean, if they bring the kind of defensive effort that they brought in the first 25 games, they're going to get waxed. Like, right. These teams will tear you apart. Not all of them. Some of them will have off nights, but those are all really, really good teams. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the trade market and specifically one player and one team that we think that at least warrants discussion as far as Denver Nuggets are concerned. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. First, I need to tell you about Taro. Taro is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Taro, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. You browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., UK, Canada, and Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or a holiday. I want to do this sometime. I just really want to take a vacation and rent like a top level car. I just want something awesome to drive in. Find an affordable economy car if you're on a budget and just want to get from A to B, or you can test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Taro.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. And your first listen, make sure your second listen is Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter to the stories that dominate the headlines, with expert and insight and analysis from all of the local hosts at the Locked On Network. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today wherever you get podcasts. All right, so let's start here. The Toronto Raptors are having themselves a little bit of a month.
I want to actually say this. I'm surprised you said you wanted to make this all about the Raptors, because I actually think there's a handful of teams that are.
We can talk about more. We can talk about more. You had wanted to talk about it last. I'm trying to follow your lead, and then you switch up on me.
I'm just saying they're right in the standings next to Chicago. There's Washington that's right there. The Atlanta Hawks are still above 500, but I'm looking at them kind of going, interesting team over there. There's a handful of teams whose seasons are not going as expected so far, and they're just like worth noting over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and not in the division for once.
So, and not in the division, which would be nice. By the way, I'm watching these games very closely. Like last night, I'm watching all of the games kind of go. I'm watching Toronto. And I'm weirdly rooting for them for some reason. I don't know. I think it's better for Denver if they keep losing. But I'm watching them, and I'm just trying to pay attention to some of these players going, does that team look like somebody that knows they're not good enough?
The Raptors are 13-18 if you haven't checked the standings. They are 2-8 in their last 10 and have lost 6 in a row. I keep pretty close tabs on Raptors Twitter. I keep pretty close tabs on them. They're smart fans, annoying, but smart. And that's why they're annoying, is because they're so smart.
6-game losing streaks, by the way, like forget record. 6-game losing streaks feel so bad.
The Raptors fans are smart enough to know when it's like, yeah, we're banged up and it's a tough schedule stretch or whatever, it'll be fine. And there's concern. And there's division within the fan base in terms of who's to blame. Like Nick Nurse is getting a lot of heat. Like a lot of heat, because not only are they losing, but they're playing the starters 40 plus minutes a night. Like they're running guys down to the end of it and still losing. And that's been a source of frustration. You can listen to that over at Locked On Raptors. As such, there's going to be talk about the roster. Like there just has to be, because eventually if the whatever mojo kept this team afloat post-championship, if that starts to fade, there's going to be questions about whether or not that team makes a move. And as Adam mentioned, there are other teams in the same boat. So the biggest name on that list is obviously OG Anunoby, who's having a Defensive Player of the Year caliber season. He's been phenomenal. Pascal Siakam is their best player by far. He is an all NBA level guy this season. He has been one of the most impressive players I've seen this season. When he came out, he had an injury. Before the injury, he was killing it. He was great last night in the loss as well. Oddly, one of the guys that's really struggled for them is Scotty Barnes. He won Rookie of the Year, and then this year taking a huge step backwards. So let me ask you this. OG Anunoby is going to be one of the hottest names on the trade market if he's made available. There was feeling around the league about, what was it? Even last year. It was last year's deadline. I had heard that they were at least open for calls about Gary Trent Jr. and OG. What do you think it would take for Denver to pull off an OG Anunoby trade, which would really have to require the Raptors pivoting to more of a rebuild status?
Which rebuild status seems like the thing they would do. If you can find a superstar, something like that. Masai has been good at that, where you think they're going to tank and then they pivot to like a better collection of stars. But if they were to rebuild, look, it's a steep price you're paying for OG Anunoby. Like it's a really steep price. That would be, to me, considered an all-in move, which first of all, let me just say, you have to start from Jamal Murray, KCP, OG Anunoby, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic. To me, that's a legitimate championship starting five, which Denver might have already with Michael Porter. I'm not trying to deny that, but I'm saying you should have confidence in Denver being able to build a playoff caliber defense around OG Anunoby, Aaron Gordon, KCP with Jokic and Murray. And then offensively, to me, OG Anunoby, of course, he's not Michael Porter, but I still think that he provides so much of what you need offensively that he's not going to disrupt what is already maybe the best offense in all the NBA. So to me, I think it's probably worth the all-in price. The thing that's scary about him is he effectively has the rest of this year and next year as being under contract, a player option after that. So it's a legitimate all-in move where the risk is you deplete yourself of assets for 1.5 years. And then you're left empty-handed. That being said, for an all-in move, you're paying all of your assets that you have, all of your young pieces. I mean, Michael Porter is the starting point, but you're probably throwing in some of the other things like picks, Bones, Zeke, whatever it is, whatever combination of those things to make it work.
Yeah, Huffman says we'd have to give up Bones, right? You'd have to give up Bones and
you're saying Michael Porter Bones, right?
Yeah,
because Michael Porter's the one that's going to make the contracts work, and also. You're not trading OG Anunoby for Bones Highland. He's an unproven young player, young guard at that. A wing defender, two-way defender is like the most valuable commodity in the NBA.
Lyco's asked this question. I want to get your thoughts on it. Maybe OG just gets worse defensively in Denver. I mean, look, it's worth asking, right? We have although I would say I don't necessarily look at any of the guys that Denver has. Maybe Bruce, just because he's having to play against small forwards. But in general, I don't know that the guys that they've played have actually played worse. They've played worse defensively, maybe, but I don't know that they are worse defenders, right? It's not. There's a differential there that kind of matters. Yeah, giving up on MPJ is going to be a really divisive one, just because of the talent level, But if you want to make an upgrade and you want to try and stabilize things, that's how it would have to be. The problem is if they're trading OG and they're going towards a rebuild. They're looking for, somebody mentioned a Donovan Mitchell type trade, which was reported. It would honestly be closer to I think a Rudy Gobert one, where you're looking for 5 picks.
I mean, this is the thing about building in the NBA today is that the picks, the market for this has been your all in play costs you all of your picks. It didn't used to be 5 picks for Drew Holiday, but that happened. And now that's the going rate for every final piece. Every time a team is one piece away, they know that it becomes binary. You either get the player you need or you don't. And so you have to be willing to pay everything you have.
So Vincent says, so wait, OG is better than healthy MPJ? What? That's not what you're saying. What are you saying in regards to that?
Well, one, healthy MPJ is not something that has been like a reliable thing. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying he's missed half of his career so far. He's been in the league, 5 seasons? He's played 2.5. He's missed half of the year. And as much a guy with 3 surgeries, if you're trying to count on, hey, we went all in this year, but he got hurt in April, and so he missed the playoffs, that's tough. And OG has his own injury risk, by the way, but I don't think anybody to the level of Michael Porter. And then secondly, when you look at the Denver Nuggets without Michael Porter, they're number 1 in offensive rating. Michael Porter makes them even better, but at some point you have to say, okay, if we're covering our bases on offense, we just have to worry about the defense, and is Michael Porter the guy? So it's more the fit, the health risk, all of those different things. Nothing happens in a vacuum, especially when you're talking about once you get past your number 1 and even number 2 guys. Once you get past that, it's like, where do they fit into the mix?
I've always been a little bit lower than OG than the intelligentsia, NBA Twitter folks, like the some other analysts level. I've just been lower on him. I will say, like, this year he's been everything that he's been promoted as. Like, his defensive stuff is insane. I was watching him one night and was just like, he makes so many plays. Like, he applies so much pressure while also making secondary plays. It's incredible. Is only shooting 34% from 3 this year. He's a standard 37% shooter. So he's not a 40% shooter. The thing there is like, well, okay, but what does he look like next to Jokic, right? It's just like, if you improve the quality of looks, what does that look like?
And not only that, I think the thing we noticed with Aaron Gordon is when you have the size but mobility defensively to be out on the perimeter, but then you have the size to where teams don't want to switch a Murray OG pin down. Like, they just don't want to do that. When you have that, then it gives you so many options to create spacing even without the three-point shot. This is why Aaron Gordon shooting 60% on the year or whatever. I think OG Anunoby would be similar in that they would keep getting the 2 guards switched out onto OG, and he would just go duck in or offensive rebound and punish guys at the rim.
Before we move on to Atlanta, I just want to quickly hit on this. Just out of curiosity, would Nick Nurse be attainable if Denver moves on from Malone? Not saying it's going to happen, but just in case, I think that Nurse is a great coach. He is a great coach. If I would say, like, what's interesting is that if Nurse gets replaced, which there's no reports thereof, I'm sure that the Raptors would deny it. He won a championship there just a few years ago. If they did move on, it would be because his voice is stale and they are no longer, like, the effort level is no longer like a lot of the same things that have been said. But Nurse's defenses have been a lot better. So, like, he's inventive, he's creative. I think he's a experienced championship coach. Like, he is the type of candidate I think that fans, media, everybody would be on board with.
Can I have you just address this comment real quick?
Is the OG trade a sneaky way to get Wancho back? That'd be amazing. That'd be great. Hey, I'm down with it at this point. Like, I want a backup big that we no longer like as a collective group of people.
No, he goes into you're wrong. He goes into the Zeke Naji role. He should be playing, Matt.
Okay.
He's not, but he should be.
But he should be. Why isn't he playing? The starters were minus 20. But I gotta ask, like, why don't we play Wancho more?
Hey, all I know is most of Denver's best games came with him during that era. Came with him on the
court. And
the Wancho game,
the KD lockdown game. That was one of my favorite nights. Because I looked over at you on the media table. I was like, what if Wancho locks down KD? And you cackled, like you were just like, and you were always high on Wancho. And then, like, he gets the first stop, and I immediately, like, turned my head to you, like a gopher in one of those videos. It was amazing. All right, let's talk about Atlanta, because Atlanta's the other one. Look, I was talking to somebody this week. I wouldn't say that. I was talking to somebody this week that works for an Eastern Conference team. And I was asking him, I was like, well, you know, I keep hearing Atlanta. And he's like, how long have we heard that Atlanta's going to make a move? He's like, we keep hearing. He's like, it's been 3 years of them. Yeah, they want to trade John Collins. He's like, they gave him money. they just keep him. Like, I don't know what, like, you know, he was saying that he wouldn't even call Atlanta if he was looking for a deal, just because it would just be a waste of time until they get serious, which they never seem to be. However, the Hawks are kind of, they're struggling a little bit. A lot of tension there, obviously, between Trae Young, Nate McMillan, etc. with what happened a couple weeks ago. Collins is back on the block. Bogdanovich is available. Hunter, I don't know if they're willing to move on from. They like Hunter a lot. It would be that what I would say is any deal that the Nuggets could construct would start with MPJ. Like, if you're going to do a big trade, you have to start with Michael Porter Jr. You can't get a deal done for anybody else. And so it starts there. And you can probably get 2 of the 3 of Bogdanovich, Collins, Hunter. You can't get all 3. You can get 2 of the 3 in a deal. And you're probably sending a pick asset out as well, along with MPJ. Bogdanovich, I think, obviously, is a player that Nikola would love playing with. That's not just based off of the itch. He's the type of player I think that he would be very comfortable with. He could start or
would he play with him though?
I'm sorry?
Would he play with him?
I think in the staggered lineups he would. Right? Like he'd play with him and if you make him
would he play more minutes or fewer than he does with Bruce Brown?
Oh.
I mean, he might just play the amount of minutes he plays with Christian Brown, which is not that much. Like that's the point of a Bogdan, because I love him too. I just don't know that he would be a guy that would play I think he would play fewer minutes with Jokic than with Jokic.
Yeah. So I guess that's the question here is would you start Bogdanovich at 3 or would you start Bruce Brown at 3?
Oh.
I'd start Christian Brown at 3.
Christian Brown. Yeah, I mean, I would too, because at that point you need, again, I keep saying this, but the Nuggets offense is through the roof. 122 with like not that, good offensive players, not great. So I don't think you need a boost to your offense. You just need defense and guys that can cover. John Collins, though, I want you to address that one, because that would be the most likely piece is if you traded Michael Porter for John Collins. Forget whatever the other pieces are that make all this work.
I'm extremely high on John Collins. I am higher on John Collins than most people are. So here's what I've seen from doing a lot of work on John Collins. He's shooting horribly, by the way, this year. You're going to look at the 3-point stuff and be like, what the hell? Because he's shooting 22% from 3. But he shot 36% last year, 39% the year before, and 40% the year before. This is an outlier performance early in the season. Also, Trae can't shoot this weird. Something weird's going on in Atlanta. So Collins, the question is always like, yeah, but what about defense? The stuff I see with Collins is inexperience, not effort. So he's locked in. He's trying to make the right move. He makes a small mistake in terms of, and we're not talking like loses a guy. We're talking like he doesn't shade him to the baseline. He closes out and allows him to get baseline. Stuff like that that's correctable. The defensive effort I see from Collins being there. Like, I think John Collins is a gamer. I think John Collins wants to win. I think John Collins plays the right way. And I think that Collins' versatility is really good. I personally like the idea of John Collins and Aaron Gordon together. I think you can play them in the same kind of style that they do with MPJ. MPJ's better offensively, no question about that. He's elite. But you can play him with AG in regards to sometimes AG guards the 3 and sometimes AG guards the 4. And you match up based off of whatever the matchup is better at. It's basically making both forwards in a combo forwards, right? Because AG's playing a lot on the inside. Collins can spot up from the outside and play to the corners just like MPJ does. But Collins has a little bit more bounce. He's got, honestly, a little bit more one-on-one game. Like, he has more one-on-one. And he never gets to show it in Atlanta because Trae Young always has the ball. And that's, I think, a source of frustration for him. Like, I think John, and one of the things I've noticed is John Collins has expressed a lot of frustration for how they play. And what he's trying to not say is basically that he doesn't think the heliocentric stuff with Trae works.
Yeah. It might also, if you just think about staggering with second units, like, he might be a good option as a second unit star. John Collins might work as a second unit number 1 option or something like that, that also fits with the starters in a lower usage role or more continuity role.
Steve
athletes too. Jokic has always looked good with athletes. I mean, John Collins is a Kenneth Faried level athlete.
Steve Wynn says, well, if Collins isn't that great defensively and is way worse than MPJ on offense, then what do you get with him? So let me kind of, I guess I'll caveat that.
I think it's fair. Fair question.
I agree. I think it's a fair question. So one, I think the defensive upgrade, even though, like, you could say, like, well, MPJ's numbers defensively are better. I think that one-on-one defense, I don't think that teams will target John Collins the same way that they're going to target MPJ in the playoffs. I don't think he's as much of a weak point there. Second, He's not the shooter MPJ is, but I will say this, like, I trust John Collins on the drive a lot more. Like, MPJ goes to the shots that he does, and he makes them, but MPJ goes to the shots that he does because he doesn't have as much confidence in his ability to go to other things.
And we have seen in playoffs, teams have been able to limit those shots from Michael Porter. Like, if you kind of focus on, okay, here's what he does. Let's force him to do this or that. And by the way, the other thing with Michael Porter, because I know a lot of people are saying, why are you guys trying to trade? Why are you trying to trade him? Maybe you're not. He's the number one trade option.
He's the guy. He's the only guy
that Denver would trade. Maybe they would trade Murray, but that would really come as a shock. I mean, that would really be a surprise. And then number two, I am concerned with Porter. Maybe it's just this heel thing, and maybe the heel thing is temporary, but I am concerned about the fact that he hasn't gotten to the rim this year. To me, that's a big concern. Like, when you start to lose that, and look, 3 back surgeries, maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just this heel thing. But 3 dunks on the year for a player that's 6'10", 6'11", that just he wasn't getting to the rim. Even though he was playing great, his game did seem to have gotten a little bit limited in ways that we're not sure are going to come back as the season goes on.
The Hawks are not taking Zeke Naji for John Collins or Bogdanovich. They're not taking those guys for KCP even. Like, they're not taking
Porter or Murray.
It's Porter or Murray. If you want to make an upgrade, that's what you're going to have to give. Let's talk about the other one, because this guy's getting mentioned here. And this is one that you're really high on, is if the Heat, I will express reservation on this, but if the Heat were to trade Jimmy Butler,
there's no way they would trade Michael Porter, though, because think about it. They've got Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. They've already got Michael Porter at home.
That's a really good joke.
With the contracts, by the way, like, if you had 3 contracts that add up to $100 million and it's all kind of the same type of guy.
The Heat, Andy Ellsberg would tell Pat Riley, hey, the Nuggets called about Jimmy. And Pat Riley's response would be, ooh, okay, so where else are they giving up besides Nikola? That would be Pat Riley's.
Let's just have fun. Can we just have fun today?
Yes.
What if it was Jamal Murray as the one you traded, and you kept Porter as your one liable defender, and you made Jimmy Butler your starting point guard? KCP, MPJ, Aaron Gordon, Jimmy Butler.
Oh boy, that combination.
That's outside the box. That's like so far. But you talk about length.
That combination of personalities is a tougher one for me to get my brain around.
I had never thought about that, to be honest, but it's interesting to think about. That's enormous, and that is 3 really good long defenders that I'm curious about, and then one guy who's 6'11", but at least it's aggregate length.
God, I will say this: Jamal and Bam would kill teams.
Jamal seems like a Miami type of guy.
I
feel like Jamal,
oh yeah,
more so than Michael Porter.
Oh yeah. 100%. 100%. They love him. They would love his toughness, his tenacity, all that stuff. I will give you go first. I want to hear your Jimmy Butler thoughts. And then I'll go.
I mean, I think Jimmy Butler is just an elite player. It's smart. I don't think that he's the thing where we disagree the most on. And look, I don't feel like 100% confident on it, but I just think that he would fit into basketball. Here's the thing. To me, there are 2 types of players. You could break every player down into 2 things. Those that enjoy the Jokic sort of style of basketball and those that don't. I think Butler would be one, whether he has played it or not. There's really not that many players that play that style. It's kind of like Warriors ball. Some players like that style. Some players hate it, and they're going to never want to fit into it. I think Jimmy Butler is a guy that would get to Denver and be like, this is the right way to play. Therefore, I will fit into it on offense and become a defensive player. And especially if you replaced him with Jamal Murray, the end of the games would be pick and roll with him anyway. So it's not like you're taking the ball out of his hands. So to me, I think he would enjoy fitting into that system. And he's a player that, like Aaron Gordon, I wouldn't be surprised if his game looked completely different than what we had seen to this point.
I don't agree. That's okay. I don't think it's like an answerable question. I think he would isolate and not run pick and roll late in games. And I think there would be a lot of, why is Nikola not getting the ball tweets.
I would be pretty shocked by that, to be honest.
I'm telling you what I've seen from watching them for as long as I have. Like, he's done that, but like he doesn't run it with Bam.
He's played with Karl Anthony Towns. He's played with, but even Bam Adebayo is not Jokic. This is the difference.
I understand, but like, he does make voluntary choices based off of what he knows about his game. I think the personality fit's terrible. I think Jimmy has worn out every single team. He's worn out every single team.
But like Chris Paul has, in my opinion, more like that, where it's good until it's terrible.
That's fair. That's a decent comp. I don't think that I have questions about whether or not Jimmy would. You know how there's a kind of resistance to putting Jokic in the conversation from certain players?
There's a what?
There's a resistance to putting Jokic in the conversation of the great players from certain players. You know how
You think Jimmy's one of those guys?
I think Jimmy's one of those guys. And so I think every time that if Nikola has one of those games where he's doing the bad body language, I think there would be conflict.
Here's my thing I'll say, though. The why do players not give Jokic their flowers? That never happens from within. I don't think there's any players that have come to Denver that have left and been like, yeah, that guy wasn't awesome. And what I mean by that is, I think, this is an opinion, I think the reason players don't value or accept or respect Jokic don't have anything to do with Jokic. Jokic becomes a symbol for something that they reject.
Yeah.
And I think Jimmy would get to Denver and be like, no, this guy's actually awesome. And he is not what the people we hate use him as a representative for.
Potsy asked, wait, so are there actual Nuggets rumors?
No.
Nope.
This is fun speculation. By the way, before we get out of this segment, one thing to mention, the all-in package for an OG becomes more palatable to me if to make the contracts match, you have to add another player. And if that player, I think for you would be Thad Young, but for me, it might be Otto Porter, who is another one of these guys who has not looked good over the last 7 years, except for when he was with the Warriors. And I think he's a guy that would look good with Denver and would be another option, another like length defensive smart player option that Denver could deploy at the spot they need it most.
Why not both?
Thad Young and Otto Porter?
Yeah.
And OG Anunoby?
Yeah.
All three guys? Well, then,
throw in Bones and Zeke.
I mean, that's what I'm saying is if you did the all-in option that featured not just one player who might leave, but like, hey, now we are really deep. The way that the Celtics are deep, the way that the Clippers are deep, the way that the Pelicans are deep, the way that the Memphis Grizzlies are deep at the wing position where you have smart players who can defend and switch and do it with length. If you got to a point in the playoffs where you didn't have just like one lineup that works, but multiple so that you could play as close to 48 minutes with those guys on the court, that would be, to me, much more palatable for going all in and losing every asset you have.
The problem there is what I hear from the front office consistently, which is like you run into the problems of guys not playing enough and being unhappy because they're not playing enough. That to me is where that
Thad Young and Otto Porter?
Yeah.
They might play a lot though.
I mean,
I think the guys that you run in the risk of then are like Christian Brown and you know, like whatever would come up behind those guys, they would probably just be cut out.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the Memphis Grizzlies game, which should be a really good one. We'll talk about that tonight in the last segment when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. First, I need to tell you about BetOnline, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. Pro football, college bowl season, and all the stuff with the NBA. They've got it at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets.
I like this comment. Thad Young, Otto, Jeff Green, Spider-Man meme. Yes, but they're different players, but they are like, again, when you have 4 or 5 guys that are 6'9" that can play on the perimeter, that's like a positive. That's where the league is going.
I feel that if you ask most Nuggets fans to choose between if they had Thad Young or just playing Zeke Naji more, they would choose to play Zeke Naji more. But
it doesn't matter. Like at that point, you're getting the other pieces, and then you have Thad Young there, who's just more, maybe less ceiling, but ready now. And somebody was like, you still need interior defense. Maybe not in the playoffs. Jeff Green at center alongside like Otto, Thad Young, that might be a viable. You're just long.
That's going to be the plan anyway. Like that the plan, everyone's like, well, you can't play DJ in the playoffs. I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And he's not going to. They're also not going to play Zeke. It's going to be Jeff Green and AG at the 5. Like, that's going to be what it is for the 8 minutes that Joker does not play by the end of the series. All right, let's talk about the Memphis Grizzlies game tonight. So this is a tough one. I went back and looked. The Grizzlies almost beat them twice in 2021. And then last year they went 3-1 versus the Nuggets. So really we have like 2 years of the Grizzlies playing them competitive and then getting over the hump last year. Now the Grizzlies are without Desmond Bane tonight, and that does make a big difference in terms of how Memphis is able to play and what their peak form is. Obviously the same is true without Michael Porter Jr., potentially without Jamal Murray tonight as well. These injury issues are considerable. Oh, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope popped up on the list, was questionable too. I asked KCP after the game about his knee after he banged knees, and he said it was sore. We'll see if KCP is able to go. The Nuggets may be pretty short-handed tonight.
They don't have KCP. This game's going to be really tough. You need your defenders. And by the way, if you don't have KCP healthy, like he might play and not, if you're hobbled, come on, man, you got to chase Ja around all night.
I kind of like this one for Bruce. This is the one where I kind of like, I think Bruce could help here. Ja's obviously fast. I don't think that's a shocker. And Ja's going to get his. A lot of it, honestly, is if you're able to contain their 3-point weapons, here's the big problem for Denver. Memphis' half-court offense is middling. It's not great. It's really not very good. Okay. Their transition offense is, in my opinion, the best in the league. The Grizzlies are the best running team in the league, and they try it almost every play. Last year they were number 1. This season they're number 3 in transition points added per 100 possessions. That's a stat over at Cleaning the Glass. They run the ball down your throat. This is a real problem versus a Denver team that we've talked about. They allow turnovers and they don't get back in transition. I do want to note, like last night I was watching the Cavs, and it was a really good example of how some of this stuff is like just effort. The Cavs had turnovers and their guys got back and got stops. Kevin Love was like at half court, wheeled back and got a 1-on-3 stop. It was 3-on-1 versus Kevin Love, and he got the stop. So like it is possible for you to turn the ball over and still get these stops. Denver's going to need that kind of effort, because if not, I do not have faith in the Nuggets offense to not turn the ball over. It's a function of their offense in some ways. If you're going to pass a lot, I think you are going to have a certain amount of turnovers. And if that's the case, then they're going to turn the ball over. And I don't have any confidence in Denver's ability to stop them in transition. That's my big take on this game.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. I mean, look, that's Denver's problem. And when they lose big, especially, they have a lot of turnovers and it gets things unravel for them. There's so many variables tonight we don't know if Murray's playing and KCP, let alone Michael Porter. I mean, who knows? Surprise Michael Porter appearance isn't out of the question. But then there's another element to this that I think is interesting. The Nuggets haven't really cared about being on national television. They were on national television for the Laker game when they laid an egg. Like that was the last time they were on national television. They're on it tonight, and then they're again on Christmas Day. There's also Jokic was player of the week this week. And if you look at the MVP ladder and the straw polls, Jokic is right up there. I think 3, 4, 5 in almost every single one you see. Jamal Morant right behind Jokic in almost every single one. Last year, Devin Booker came to Denver late in the season when Jokic looked like he was for sure going to be the MVP, and Devin Booker dropped 60 points on Denver. And it was kind of, to me, like Devin Booker showed up to that game being like, they're not giving me consideration. They're giving this guy, I'm going to make a point. I think Jamal Morant comes in with a chip on his shoulder tonight of a national televised game for the 1 seed and a chance to really push yourself up. Oh, everybody's talking about Jokic as the MVP. Let me outplay him on national television and try to surpass him as in the narrative. And I honestly think players like Jamal Morant care about that a lot. I don't think Jokic cares about it at all. I think he's going to play because he always plays. But tonight, I would not be surprised if Memphis is looking at this as a statement game, and Jamal Morant in particular.
Man, Memphis looks at every game versus a good team as a statement game. That's one of the things that they get up for every game.
They have an overload of the thing Denver's most lacking, which is just swag and toughness and that stuff.
Yes. Dylan Brooks is playing really good defense. He's a nightmare offensively, but Brooks is a really top line defender. And he fouls a lot, but he also just plays extremely physical. And so if Jamal's not 100%, that could be tough for him. I think it's also a tough one because what's been part of the Nuggets' success offensively is Aaron Gordon is his success inside. Yeah. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a legit Defensive Player of the Year candidate. His block rate is absurd. He is phenomenal on the defensive end. Like, as a guy that has a partiality to Memphis, like, I'll tell you, Jaren, my frustration with Jaren has been that he doesn't have a set of go-to offensive moves, but he's this good defensively, makes it worth it. Like, he is absolutely incredible. They have a lot of guys that'll surprise you. Santi Aldama is playing really well this season.
Would you say they're deep?
Yes. They have one of the best benches in the league, which is kind of surprising me because I don't love their bench talent, right? But I think if you look at how they play them together, they really make it work, and the number's going to back that up. Tyus Jones is going to go off. He's going to hit floaters all day. If they play DJ and they don't switch, Tyus Jones is going to hit threes. Like, Zeke needs to play tonight because they badly need to switch in that second unit. Or Jones is going to, they're one of the best floater teams in the league. They will tear you up. David Roddy, by the way, out of Colorado State, having a really good season. I've liked what I've seen.
What? A good season? He's having a horrible season. This is crazy to me. He's playing a lot of minutes, but he has not been good. This was one of the points I was getting ready to bring up. Oh, wow. Last year, they start Zaire Williamson, one of the worst starters in all the NBA. They start him for 2/3 of the season, and then by the playoffs, he's good. David Roddy is not having a good season. And yet here he is playing every single night, 15 minutes a night. It's just part of their plan of hey, we are going to suffer through some bad minutes. And it's like a organizational philosophy that they have carried for 3 seasons now. And guess what? It's paying off. David Roddy has not been good, but he plays every single night despite that.
This is a good example of the eye test and then not doing the backup numbers on it because he's shooting 29% from 3. I've seen him hit a 3 in almost every game I've watched from Memphis and looked really good. So this is eye test versus the numbers and not
shooting 30% overall.
Yeah, you're right. He's having you are objectively right. He's having a terrible season.
But he's young. I'm not trying to be mean to him.
I know you're not. You're just refuting what I said, which is you're absolutely right to do so. They are missing, but without Bane, they're not able to get to the maximum. Again, I got to really stress this. Zeke's got to play tonight. Brandon Clark is one of the best small ball weapons that you can have in the league. The stagger lineups with Ja and Brandon Clark kill teams. Because you have to put so much attention on him. Brandon Clark is the perfect small ball roll option. So you really got to be able to I don't have faith in their ability to contain Ja even with 2. And that means Clark's getting these opportunities to go 3-on-2 with the rest of the team. So this is a tough one.
This is my fear, though, Matt. I mean, look, you're this is a Zeke game. Man, Zeke's going to get murdered by Brandon Clark. Are you kidding me? This is why my biggest fear has been that, not playing those guys during the Chicago, New York, Detroit, Oklahoma City, double Houston stretch of the game, but now playing them against the Memphis, Portland, Phoenix, Sacramento part is going to be the absolute worst. Because to me, those are tough matchups. And Zeke, I almost like maybe against Jaren Jackson just because he stands in the corner. So at least it gives you attention. It does not he kills him, but stand in the corner and hopefully hit a couple threes. But Brandon Clark, my God, that guy's a rebounding monster, an athletic freak. Zeke is not an athletic freak. He's the opposite of that. So to me, that's a scary matchup.
Yeah. See, for me, it's Brandon Clark's going to outwork DJ.
So he'll outwork everybody. I mean,
yeah. So you might as well go with a team with a weapon that you can switch with. That would be my argument. I'm definitely not setting Zeke up for failure. So I think as we look at this option, I kind of expect Memphis to win this one. I think they beat Memphis. I think they. I think they lose to Memphis, beat Portland, and I think that Phoenix is a coin flip. What do you think?
Well, the Phoenix game. There's so many variables between Phoenix and Denver about who plays on Christmas.
Yeah.
So who knows with that one, but. Tonight, I just have a hard time seeing. The line tonight on BetOnline was just 1.5 Memphis. I was shocked by that. I was so shocked.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's actually funny? Do you know what this game opened at?
What?
Nuggets -2. It opened -2, and then the injury report's part of it. But the Sharps absolutely came in on this game heavy on Memphis. Although, look, I'll tell you, Action Network app. Denver's getting the majority of the money and the tickets.
I love that.
That's what's keeping this at Memphis -1.5. I would imagine Sharps are hitting Memphis and the public's on Denver at home.
Hilarious.
So Look, if they got a win, this would be a great win for Denver.
Oh, it'd probably maybe be their best win of the season. I mean, it'd be a big one, at least up there. It is funny, though, I will say that Denver doesn't always lose. But when they do, it's usually on national television and by 20 points. So this is why Denver, people are like, look at their Pythagorean win-loss or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, they have 5 losses for a combined 120 points. Like, it weighs them down so much.
Yeah. All right, let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Good show today. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate all the comments in the chat. Hope you guys have yourselves a great week. If you're traveling for the holidays, stay safe. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On.